Jeff Walenko Diesel Performance and LDP Machine here for another Tech Tip Tuesday. This week we chose to do installing main seals, primarily on diesels, but it's equally important on any application. One big thing with putting main seals in is having the proper tooling. We got a Cummins here that we're doing today, we're demonstrating on, and it's pretty easy to put the seals in a Cummins without tools, but it's also easy to mess it up. One of the most important things with main seals is that they're installed straight. They're not crooked, they're installed at the right depth. So you can, install the rear seal in the cover, put it on the engine, and you might get lucky. Some people have good results doing that. Same with the front, but we found a lot of issues with trying to push them in, either a press or driving the hammer, trying to get them straight. So it's pretty problematic. So as far as putting seals in, pretty much in any application, you need to have the right tooling. Main seal installer. This one here is for the rear seal on a Cummins. The reason we bought this will install a wear sleeve. So if you see it's got multiple shoulders in there, this will install a wear sleeve and a seal at the same time. That's why I bought it, and then I started using it on normal seals, and I've never done one without it. It makes life a lot easier. This is made by Stallion. Stallion's an aftermarket tool company that makes copies of OEM tools, specialty tools like this. They're pretty affordable. If you're doing this a lot, I highly recommend getting this. These things are great. They said with or without a rear seal. So that's what we're gonna do today. We're gonna pop the rear seal in, and then we're gonna do the front seal. So your Cummins seals come with the installer. The purpose of that is to help the lip seal get started on the crankshaft. With the old lip style seal, you'll have a lot of trouble trying to get started without the installer. So I've already got the rear cover loosely mounted on the engine, and that's important. I say loosely because you want it to be able to float. This rear cover on a Cummins is not doweled, so the seal actually centers on the crankshaft. So if you throw it on there, tighten the bolts down, it could be 15, 20 thousandths off one way or another, and you're gonna have a short seal life if it seals at all. So these can be quite the bugger to get them back out, but they work great. So you start your installer on the crank, and then you're gonna push your seal on by hand. Now here lately, I've actually been going around working this down with a hammer a little bit, just to get started to help get that seal starter out of there. And the key thing is to keep it straight. Again, we've got a nice installer tool to do this properly, but this is a step that I learned helps aid even with the installer. And again, the main reason I do this is to help get it off of the seal starter. Otherwise, when you pull this plastic sleeve out of there, so it'll come out real easy. If you don't have the seal started enough, it'll just pull the seal off with it. So now that we've got it tapped down and started on there, we'll put our tool on there. And again, the rear seal housing is loose. We want to get it started where we're confident that it's centered on the crank, and then we'll go ahead and tighten our bolts down. So again, having the right tools makes a big difference. If you're a guy doing it at home in your garage, you can take a chance on doing it without having the installers. But if you're doing this for a living, you don't want to come back. Having the right tools makes a big difference. So and you can see through the center of the tool, you can see the distance from the crankshaft, so you know how far you've got to go yet. All right. So one important thing on the rear main seal housing on the Cummins is, since this does float around, you got to make sure it's level with the pan rail to have a good seal of your pan gasket. So we're gonna walk this in, evenly, keeping an eye on the distance that we've got. So, getting her straight. You want to alternate. All right, we're nice and even. We're far enough down. We still got a little bit to go yet. So it's a good time to go ahead and square up your housing and torque your bolts down. So we go off the pan rail and then we rotate the housing around until it's level with the pan rail. A lot of times I just eyeball these two, but the proper way to do it with a straight edge or a ruler. Now at this point, we're gonna go ahead and torque down our main seal housing bolts. Because if you forget to torque them down and you push that seal in and then you go and tighten it, you're pulling the housing closer to the block, so your seal isn't gonna be installed at the right depth. That's really important if you have a wear sleeve. All right, now we'll go ahead and pull the seal in. Again, make sure you alternate, because even though you got the tool, you can still get it crooked. So I watch right here, and like I said, you can watch the center pilot and see how far you have to go, but as far as making sure it's square, you look right here. Just go to a snug, you know it's bottomed out and it's installed all the way, so. All right, so seal installed, right depth, even all the way around. So rear seal's done. Main reason I wanted to show that was to show you how to true up the housing and go over the importance of making sure that cover is centered with the crankshaft if it's not doweled. Most of your diesels, the covers are doweled like your front is. Well, the front timing cover is actually not. It centers off the seal as well on a Cummins, but on a Duramax Power Stroke, you're usually doweled. So come over here, we got a whole drawer full of seal installers. 6.7, 6.4, 6.0, 7.3 Power Stroke, Duramax, and Cummins. So it's a lot of money and tooling to buy, but it ensures the job is done right. So we've got the rear done. Into the front now. On the front, we actually have our own tool that we sell to make this job easier. Fought the front seal for years, which led to the development of our front seal installer. So it's pretty simple. It's got a shoulder cut in it. This shoulder sets the depth of the front seal and the cover to their proper depth. And then we set the inner piece up to where the diameter here is the same diameter as the front side of the crankshaft, so the seal fits it just like it would the crank. It's piloted, so the two pieces go together perfectly true. Makes it real easy. So if you're using our installer, you're going to install the seal on the installer just like you would on the crankshaft. And depending on the style seal, some of them actually fit tight on here. The newer style ones do. The older style like this typically don't fit real tight. So just depending on the manufacturer and the year of the truck. See, this one doesn't fit really tight. If you left it on there for 24 hours, it probably would. But that's what we designed it toward, to actually hold it on there. So if you're using this, make sure that the center pilot has some sort of lubrication. You got a steel pilot and an aluminum puck, so they can want to gold together. So make sure you lubricate that. And then you want to use, if you're pulling it over the bolt as opposed to press, you want to make sure you've got some lube on 2 washers to make a bearing. So I normally reach for some ARP lube because it's going to be handy, but that makes a bearing, prevents from tearing the tool up. So front cover, install the outer puck, and it should fit nicely in there, centers it. Then you've got your seal on the inner half, slides on the pilot, lines it up perfectly true. And again, you can do this in a press. That's how I originally designed it for, but then we figured out the pulling out of the bolt was so much faster, and it works great, and it's just so much faster. This is how we always do it now. So you can still use the press, but so super simple, pulls it into the right depth with a power tool. It can't get any easier than that. So you see that's installed perfect. And then you just want to make sure that before you put your cover on, you put your seal starter sleeve back in, especially if it's going to sit for a while. That'll help expand the lip. So put that back in for later. And then we wanted to show on the wear sleeve. People are always asking about wear sleeve. Ever since we come with that tool, we're getting a lot of people asking if we have an installer for the wear sleeve. And I've told people before, just use your balancer. Then we're going to show you what we mean by that. But what we did, we took it one step further. We took an old 12-valve balancer that we had laying around, cut the center out, drilled 4 holes. So if you've got a fluid apron pin like this one does, or if you have 2 or 3, and or the factory dowel, we just went ahead and drilled 4 holes so it'll have plenty of clearance. And then what we did on this one, we actually went on the inside and we turned the shoulder in here 15 thousandths. So we can actually set that seal 15 thousandths beyond flush. But if you just use your balancer, it's going to set it flush as long as you tighten all 4 bolts down. It'll get the job done. But this is something we come up with recently just to do an even better job. If we get enough interest, we would consider making these. Obviously not having an old balancer, but actually machining those and selling them. So on the wear sleeve, you know, these wear sleeves don't always go on perfectly true. They're not the highest quality machine part, and you might have scratches in your crank. That's why you're putting a seal saver on. So we'd always recommend on any main seal with the sleeve, use Loctite. We use red anaerobic because it's a sealant as well. So you want to put it on the leading edge, so the edge that you're going to start on the crankshaft. You don't need a ton. And again, the purpose of this is to seal it so you don't get hot oil seeping through. So I always tap them on a little bit with a plastic hammer. Watch it, make sure it's nice and straight, but they'll go on fairly easy to get started. Important thing, plastic hammer and walking it on evenly. It'll walk itself on straight if you take your time and you work around. So work it on as far as you can, and then use balancer bolts. Definitely want to put some type of a lube on the head of the bolt, and especially the threads, because you don't want to gald up the threads in your crankshaft. We use an extreme pressure grease for when we're doing this. ARP lube works just fine. Really any kind of grease or anti-seize would work. So the threads and under the head of the bolts, I've already done these 2. So we're gonna go ahead and throw this on there. And the important thing with doing this is to make sure that you get the center pilot lined up. So whether you're using your balancer or a tool like this, you want to make sure that the center pilot gets lined up with the crank as you're pulling it on. Otherwise it'll want to go crooked. And then just like with the rear, nice and even. So alternate Go around nice and easy, and again, watch that center pilot the whole time. I want to be very mindful of that center pilot. All right, I'm gonna crack this tool loose and rotate it around now. We're getting closer. You can use an impact on this if you're careful. If I wasn't on camera, I probably would be using one right now. But for demonstration purposes, I want to do it by hand, show you all the right way to do it. The most important thing though is that you don't ever get it in a bind, because you can stretch that sleeve. Those sleeves are thin, they're about 50 thousandths wall thickness. So easier to deform them, easier to distort them, especially when you're pulling them on like this. You can put a flat spot in them and ruin them really quick and ruin your day out in the garage. So again, we're watching that center pilot, which we're piloted on. We're bringing it in nice and easy, alternating. And the whole thing with using the balancer, that's just a tip that we wanted to share with you. You can use the balancer for your engine and do the same thing. So, works good, doesn't cost you anything, and it sure beats trying to drive that wear sleeve on. So, same principle, only we cut the step in this one to ensure that we're installing that sleeve beyond flush. As long as you're sure you got it flush, you're not gonna have any problems pulling your balancer up nice and straight. But the last thing you want is for that wear sleeve to be hanging off the end. If it's protruding off the end, you're gonna have a loose balancer, or when you tighten your balancer and you torque it to 96 or whatever hardware you're using, it could smash the end of it, which would deform the seal, cause a leak, and more than likely still result in your damper coming loose. So we're almost done here. Just want to show you what it looks like when it's done. All right. Okay, so you can tell we are, installed beyond flush, which is ideal. If you use your balancer, you're going to get it flush. As long as you do it right, you're going to be okay. But with the Loctite, if the Loctite would set up and it's say sticking out even 5 thousandths, you might break it loose and move it, you might not. So you don't want your balancer coming loose. So very important that you're at least flush. But like I said, that's why we did this with this tool, and it does a real nice job. It puts it in there just a little bit beyond flush, about 15 thousandths, which doesn't matter if it's 1 thousandths. It's the fact that you know that it's installed all the way. So you're always gonna have some Loctite on here. Wipe it off quick, clean out your bowl holes unless you plan on using Loctite. And now you're ready to stick your front cover on. Again, using the installer on there, you're gonna pop it on, center it on there, push it on, good to go. So if you're looking for any of these tools, this one here, the Cummins Front Seal Installer, we make that. That's available on our website. All these other tools, the Stallion, OTC, several companies make them. You can find them on the internet. If anybody has any questions, looking for some of those tools, where to get them or part numbers, hit me up. I'd be glad to help you out. So hopefully this helps, man. Hopefully it stops some leaks on your Cummins. Thanks.